The morning I got the call about the CFO position, I was standing in our kitchen in socks that didn't match, packing my husband's lunch, because he'd asked me to the night before, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I remember looking at my phone screen, my manager's name, Diane, lighting it up, and feeling something shift in my chest before I even answered. 6 years of 60-hour weeks. 6 years of skipping my cousin's wedding because of a quarterly close, of eating sad desk salads while my husband texted me asking what was for dinner, of building something at that company that everyone used and nobody with my last name noticed. "We want you, Vivian," Diane said. She was using her serious voice, the one she saved for budget meetings. "Chief Financial Officer. The board approved it this morning." I said thank you. I said I was honored. I set down the knife I was using to cut my husband's sandwich, and I stood very still for a moment, looking at the window above the sink, at the ordinary Tuesday sky outside. Then I finished making the sandwich, put it in the bag, and went upstairs to get ready for work. I don't know why I didn't shout it up the stairs right then. I think some part of me already knew that the reaction I needed wasn't waiting for me in that house. My husband's name is Curtis. We met in our late 20s at a work event. He was charming, funny, the kind of man who remembers details about people and asks real follow-up questions. On our third date, he told me he believed in partnership, real partnership, 50-50, both people carrying the weight. I remember thinking, here is someone who gets it. We got married at 30. By 32, I was pregnant with our daughter, and something shifted in the architecture of our life so gradually that I genuinely couldn't tell you the exact moment it happened. I just know that at some point, the 50-50 became something else, something that looked more like 90-10 on a generous day. Curtis worked in sales. Good income, inconsistent schedule, a lot of client dinners that ran late. I worked in finance at a mid-sized healthcare tech firm, the kind of company where being reliable and precise and never dropping a single ball meant everything. I was very good at being reliable. I was so good at it, in fact, that I eventually became reliable at home too. The one who handled the daycare pickup when his meeting ran over. The one who called the plumber, scheduled the pediatrician, tracked the school order, remembered which kid in our daughter's class had the peanut allergy so I could warn the other parents at the birthday party. I'm not saying Curtis was cruel. I want to be honest about that because it's the part that took me the longest to understand. He wasn't cruel. He just never looked up long enough to notice how much I was carrying. And this is the part I'm less proud of. I never made him look. I kept waiting for him to see it on his own. I kept thinking, if I just hold it together a little longer, he'll realize. He'll step up. He'll say thank you at least. He didn't. By the time Diane called me that Tuesday morning, I had been the primary earner in our household for 3 years running. Curtis's commission structure had changed, his territory had been reorganized twice, and somewhere in there the math had just quietly stopped being equal. We'd never talked about it directly. I'd absorbed the gap the way I absorbed everything else, by adjusting, recalculating, making it work without comment. I told Curtis about the promotion that evening at dinner. Our daughter was at my mother's for the week, spring break, so it was just the two of us, which I thought would make it easier. I said it simply. CFO, effective next quarter. Significant salary increase. Curtis put down his fork. There was a pause that lasted maybe 3 seconds, and in those 3 seconds I watched something move across his face that I still can't fully name. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't even surprise, exactly. It was more like recalibration. Like he was running numbers behind his eyes. "That's a lot more hours," he said. "It is," I said, "but the compensation. So basically I'll never see you." I looked at him. "Curtis, I'm just saying." He picked his fork back up. "You're already barely home before 7. CFO is what, 8, 9? And travel probably. I'm going to be doing everything around here." I want to tell you I responded to that calmly. I want to tell you I laid out the facts in a clear, measured way. But I had just gotten the most significant professional news of my career, and my husband's first response had been to calculate how it inconvenienced him, and something inside me went very quiet in a way that wasn't peace. "I'll figure it out," I said. That was it. That was the whole conversation. He said congratulations sometime later that evening, in the same tone he used to confirm he'd seen my texts. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when he said it, and I looked at my own face in the mirror and I thought, how long have I been this tired? The conversation about money came 3 weeks later. I had been officially announced in the new role. There was a small thing at the office, cake, a few toasts, a card with everyone's signatures. I came home still wearing my blazer, feeling I don't know. Full. In the way that good days leave you full. Like something had been worth it. Curtis was on the couch, watching something on his laptop with his headphones on. He didn't take them off when I came in. I stood in the doorway for a moment, and then I went upstairs and changed into sweatpants and came back down and made tea, and eventually he took the headphones off and said, Hey, I said. I've been thinking, he said, about finances. Something in his voice made me set the mug down. I think we should separate our accounts. I waited. I mean, now that you're making significantly more, it changes the dynamic, right? I don't want to feel like I'm living off your income. I think it would be healthier if we each managed our own money and then contributed to shared expenses proportionally. I looked at him for a long time. Long enough that he shifted on the couch. Proportional to what? I asked. To income. What we each make. So I would cover roughly 70% of shared expenses. Something like that, give or take. Curtis. I kept my voice very even. Who do you think has been covering the gap for the last 3 years? While your commissions were restructured. While we still had the same mortgage, the same daycare, the same everything, he had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. That was a transitional period, right? I said. It was. There was a silence. I just think, he said, that it would be cleaner. Less resentment. I thought about saying, the resentment is already here, Curtis. It moved in years ago. And it didn't come from the checking account. But I didn't say that. I picked up my mug and I said, okay, if that's what you want, let's separate our accounts. He seemed almost surprised that I agreed. I noticed that. I want to be honest about why I said yes. It wasn't a plan, exactly. Not the kind of thing you diagram on a whiteboard. It was more that in the moment he asked, something in me got very clear. 6 years of invisible labor has a way of clarifying things. I had been carrying this household for so long and so quietly that he had genuinely lost track of what the carrying cost. So I thought, okay. The next 2 months were educational. I stopped scheduling things. Not dramatically, not in a way that announced itself. I just stopped initiating. I stopped calling the insurance company when there was a billing dispute. I stopped putting the dentist appointments in the shared calendar. I stopped picking up the dry cleaning that had been sitting there since February. I kept paying my share of the mortgage, my utilities proportional split, my half of our daughter's school expenses. I did not keep covering the slack for everything else. It took Curtis 11 days to realize the trash hadn't been scheduled for pickup in 2 weeks. It took him 18 days to discover the car registration had been mailed back because of a paperwork error he'd been CC'd on for 3 months and never responded to. It took him 31 days to mention, with visible stress, that he didn't know what to do about the water heater making that sound. I told him to call a plumber. He asked if I had the number. I told him to Google it. The look on his face was in something between bewilderment and something older. Like a man who has just discovered a support structure he didn't know existed, because he'd never had to look up to see it. My mother-in-law arrived on a Saturday in April that she had apparently planned to visit for some time. Curtis had mentioned it at some point. I had marked it on the calendar, and then, in keeping with my new approach, did not prepare anything. Her name is Beverly. I should tell you about Beverly because she's important, and she's not what you'd expect from a story like this. Beverly is 71. She raised Curtis and his brother largely on her own after his father left when they were in middle school. She worked as a hospital administrator for 30 years and retired with a pension and strong opinions about everything, expressed with great precision and zero apology. I had always liked her. I wasn't sure in that period if she still liked me. We had barely talked since the promotion. She arrived around noon. I was at the kitchen table with my laptop doing some work. Something I wouldn't have allowed myself on a weekend 2 years ago. And Curtis was in the garage doing something I couldn't identify by the sound. Beverly came in, set down her bag, looked at the kitchen, and then looked at me. The kitchen was not a disaster, but it was not the kitchen she was used to arriving to. The counter had 3 days of miscellaneous mail on it. The fruit bowl was empty. There were fingerprints on the glass of the cabinet above the coffee maker. "Where's Curtis?" she asked. "Garage," I said. She went and got him. I heard them in the hallway, low voices, and then she came back in alone and sat down at the table across from me. "Talk to me," she said. I looked up from my laptop. "Vivian," she said, You look like you've been underwater for a year and you just got to the surface. Talk to me. I don't know why it was that specific sentence that did it. I had not cried in front of another person in a long time. I had not told anyone the full shape of it. Not my sister, not my closest friend, nobody. There was something about Beverly's directness maybe, or the specific tiredness of being seen by someone who hadn't expected to see you. I told her. Not everything, not in a rush. I'm not that kind of person. But I told her enough. The 3 years of carrying the financial gap, the evening of my promotion, the separate accounts, the 11 days of the trash, the 31 days of the water heater. Beverly listened without interrupting. That alone was remarkable. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My son is an intelligent man who learned to be helpless because no one charged him for it." I didn't say anything. "I'm not making excuses," she said. "I'm telling you what happened, and I think you already know." "I know," I said. "What do you want?" she asked. "Not what do you want from Curtis, not what do you want to happen, just, what do you want?" I thought about it. Longer than was comfortable, sitting across from my mother-in-law at my own kitchen table. "I want a partner," I said. "I want what he said we were going to be when we got married. I don't think I've had that in years. I don't know if he knows that." Beverly nodded once. "Let me talk to him." I don't know exactly what she said to him. They were in the living room for almost 2 hours. I took our daughter, who had come home by then, to the backyard, and we planted seeds in the little raised bed we'd been meaning to start since last fall. And I tried to be present and mostly was. At some point I heard Curtis's voice go higher and then drop again. That particular register he used when he was upset and trying not to show it. I heard Beverly's voice, measured, consistent, like water wearing stone. When they came into the backyard, Curtis looked different. I don't mean physically. I mean there was something in the way he was holding himself that reminded me of the early days, when he was new to something and knew it and didn't try to hide it. He sat down next to the raised bed. Our daughter handed him a seed packet without being asked, like she'd decided he needed a job. "I owe you an apology," he said. "A real one, not a sorry you felt that way one." I looked at him. I've let you carry things," he said, "that I should have been carrying alongside you. I think I told myself it was because you were better at them, and that was true, partly. But it was also just easier not to look." "It was," I said. "I knew about the financial gap," he said. "I didn't want to know how much. There's a difference." "There is," I said. Our daughter was now reading the instructions on the seed packet very seriously, pretending she wasn't listening to every word. "I don't want separate accounts," he said. "I don't want a transaction. He stopped. "I want to be the person I told you I was." Lee was standing at the edge of the yard with her arms folded, not looking at us, looking at the neighbor's fence, giving us the room. I thought about the morning 3 weeks ago when I'd made his lunch in socks that didn't match, while waiting to hear if my entire career had just changed. I thought about the 3 seconds of silence after I told him about the CFO position. I thought about standing at the bathroom mirror that night and noticing how tired I looked. I thought about what Beverly had asked me. "What do you want?" "Okay," I said. "Then we start over. Not pretend it didn't happen, actually start over. With a conversation about what we both need and what we're both willing to do." "Okay," he said. "And Curtis." I looked at him steadily. "I need you to understand that I have never been doing you a favor by holding everything together. I have been doing it because I had to. Because if he didn't, it fell. That's not a system that works. That's just me absorbing consequences that were supposed to belong to both of us." He was quiet for a moment. "I know," he said. "I'm starting to. It didn't transform overnight. I want to be clear about that, because stories like this can make it sound like there's a single conversation that fixes things, and I don't believe in that version of reality." We started couples counseling a month later. There were sessions where I left feeling worse before I felt better. There were nights where I was still angry, and the anger had nowhere clean to go. But things changed. Slowly and then faster than I expected. Curtis started making dinner on the nights I worked late, not because I asked, but because he started paying attention to my schedule the way I had always paid attention to his. He called the plumber. He figured out the trash pickup calendar. He started keeping a list on the refrigerator, just a simple notepad page, of things that needed doing, and he started doing them. He sat down with me in June and we made a real financial plan. Not a proportional split designed to make him feel less financially diminished, but an honest accounting of what we each brought in, what our actual expenses were, what we were saving, and where the contributions came from. He looked at that spreadsheet for a long time. I didn't realize, he said. How much was you? I know you didn't, I said. I should have looked. Yes, I said, you should have. That's the thing I have come to understand about the years of invisible labor. It doesn't make the person invisible, it makes the labor invisible. And there is a difference. I was always there. He just chose, without quite choosing, not to see the effort beneath my presence. Beverly stayed for a long weekend. On her last morning she found me in the kitchen first, before Curtis was up, and she poured herself a cup of the coffee I'd made, and sat across from me, and didn't say anything for a while. You didn't have to fight to make him see you, she said finally. You just stopped making it easy not to. Is that different from fighting? I asked. She considered it. Yes. Fighting is trying to force someone to look. What you did was just remove what was blocking the view. I thought about that for a long time after she left. I am still thinking about it, in some ways. The question of how much we absorb before we decide we've absorbed enough. The question of when patience becomes its own kind of disappearing act. I don't have a clean answer to either of those things. What I know is this. I went to work every day for 6 years and built something real. I kept a household running on one hand and a career climbing with the other, and the cost of that split attention was something I paid quietly, for a long time, without anyone making me an invoice. I don't regret the work. I regret the silence around it. The years of assuming he'd notice without being told. The way I'd gotten so efficient at invisibility that I'd half disappeared even to myself. The CFO position started officially the first week of May. My first morning in the new office, I took the long route in, the one that goes past the river. The water was doing what it does in spring, that fast, high, almost reckless energy, moving without apology. I thought, yes, and I went to work.